All right, back with Springfield's Morning News on WMAY, and sheriffs across the state saying that they will not enforce the gun ban, and we've got the map now updated from some internet sleuths showing that indeed you look across the state and you can see just exactly where these sheriffs stand on this. And even an update here, those opposed and will not enforce in red, and you've got just all but a handful. Those who are opposed but enforcement's unclear. That as well is still very much up in the air and not sure what's happening with those counties. But you do have others that say that they will support the enforcement of this. But here in Sangamon County, here's Sangamon County Sheriff Jack Campbell, who joined us last week to talk a bit about how he's not going to enforce this or use his jails to put people into custody for violating this particular law.
And, you know, we are not going to proactively go around and see if somebody registered their weapon. We're going to use good discretion. We always have had discretion on our side, and that is one thing we're going to do. We're going to use discretion, educate people as to what the law says, and ensure that they know, what they should be doing. And again, one thing we will not do is bring them to our jail. If that is the sole charge that they have is a violation of this act, they will not be housed in our jail, and we'll make that clear to all the chiefs in Sangamon County. Absent other circumstances, absent other crimes that were committed or lengthy criminal history, we will not be housing anybody solely on that charge.
So Sheriff Jack Campbell making that proclamation last week, and there are dozens of counties across the state that are not going to be enforcing this. But that wasn't the only back and forth there was last week. You had also, we had the director of the Illinois State Rifle Association, Richard Pearson, on. He talked about compiling the lawsuit. They hope to have that out here soon. Could it be this week? You've got others who are looking at lawsuits as well. Could it be this week? We'll be watching that closely. But Governor J.B. Pritzker was also on CNN on Friday and talked about how there's other states out there that have bans on certain types of weapons.
God, of course.
And the sheriff, of course, across the state, not having any willingness to comply with this or to enforce this particular law. But if this goes to the courts, as we fully expect, how will it do in the courts? Governor J.B. Pritzker on CNN on Friday, not really having many allusions as to exactly how this is going to play out in the courts. So here is his Q&A with CNN on Friday, followed by Richard Pearson, who had his comments with us on Friday, talking about the lawsuit and the trajectory of that lawsuit. Here's that back and forth. Right here on WMAY.
Well, of course, we are concerned about the rightward turn, significant rightward turn of the Supreme Court. But the note that Alito and Clarence Thomas put out was a note about the procedural context of this law that they left in place. We know the way they're going to vote, but I have to say we have 8 states that have passed assault weapons bans. We're the 9th state. So we believe that the Supreme Court will take into account the fact that these are established law, have been for some time.
Well, we're the first state since the Bruin decision that the Supreme Court came down with in October. The New York State Rifle and Pistol Association, which is a partner of ours in New York, sued under City of New York and New York, several things, several items. One, you couldn't transport a gun, so forth and so on. So Bruin, Judge Thomas particularly, wrote a new opinion of the Second Amendment. And this is the first case that's going to hit with that that new opinion in place.
So that's the governor, followed by Richard Pearson from the State Rifle Association, talking about the possibility of the U.S. Supreme Court getting their hands on Illinois' gun ban and what could happen post-Bruin decision, which a lot of people say is a new precedent that the U.S. Supreme Court setting, saying that you can't balance the interests of public safety versus civil rights. Civil rights are sacrosanct, and you got to uphold them. And it's text and tradition when it comes to to the Second Amendment. But that didn't stop there. The back and forth didn't stop there. Governor J.B. Pritzker on hand with a whole bunch of legislative leaders and the Illinois Attorney General yesterday, or rather, I'm sorry, I'm still kind of stuck in the work week. On Friday, up in Chicago, Pritzker and Attorney General Kwame Raoul were part of a much larger news conference where they expanded access to abortion. But as is typical with these news conferences, the governor gets up and he's asked questions that might not be on topic, but the topic of one of the questions was about the issue of the gun ban and how they're going to go about enforcing this. Here is Governor J.B. Pritzker, followed by Attorney General Kwame Raoul, sounding off on how they see enforcement of this playing out across the state of Illinois on Friday at an unrelated event.
Yes, sir.
Move on to one of your other legislative triumphs this year, the assault weapons ban. You're facing some pushback from sheriffs around the state. A dozen or more have said they will not enforce the bill. Perhaps you and perhaps the Attorney General can comment on what can be done to protect the assault weapons ban and how you intend to address those sheriffs.
Well, let's be clear. They took an oath of office to enforce the laws of the state of Illinois, and they will do so. At this point, as you know, people need to register their existing weapons. We've outlawed the purchase, the sale of these assault weapons, and it's up to individuals who own weapons today to come forward. They have to file a paper with the state police, as you know. That's not something that requires the intervention of a sheriff, for example. And I think that they're doing it as a matter of political grandstanding. They hope to delay long enough to have this run through the court system. I'm confident that this is a constitutional law that we've signed into existence, and they'll find that out once it's gone through the process. But again, these are folks who are entrusted by the public to enforce the law. They don't get to choose which laws they enforce. They must enforce what we've written into the code, the General Assembly, signed by the governor, and they will do so. Happy to have the Attorney General if you have another comment.
I think Kwame Raoul gets up.
Well, first of all, ditto. I, as Attorney General, I get to weigh into my legislators as to what our opinion is on pending legislation. Sheriffs have a sheriff's association. They have an opportunity to do the same. But once the legislature passes a legislation and the governor attaches his signature to it, it's the law of the land that they have the duty that they've sworn an oath to enforce. I will say also that as law enforcement agencies, there's overlap in jurisdiction as well. So if they don't do their jobs, there are other people available to do the job.
So Kwame Raoul saying that if they don't do their jobs, talking about sheriffs, and sheriffs across the state are saying that they won't enforce this. He says that if they don't do their jobs, then somebody will come and do their jobs for them. Your thoughts on this? We'll get to some of your calls now, but also after the break here, we got to talk about the ATF and new rules that's leading a lot of people across the country, not just in Illinois, looking at whether or not they're going to comply with a gun registry. So stay tuned for that. But good morning. You're on WMAY. What's up?
Yeah, Kwame Raoul's wrong. Sheriffs are elected, not appointed. But I think it's hilarious that these people get so up in arms about sheriffs not enforcing the law, but have no qualms with them not enforcing immigration law. We have Chicago as a sanctuary city. Why aren't they arresting people there? Why aren't sheriffs being held to account?
Well, it's because they passed a state law several years ago called the Trust Act that essentially says that local law enforcement can't work with federal immigration officials if immigration officials are looking to issue a detainer to hold somebody who's in the country illegally. So the state of Illinois passed laws to say, no, we're not going to comply with that federal law. So, yeah, kind of fascinating. And I think one theme that we're going to hear a lot about in the days, weeks, months, and years ahead is a double standard, and how we see double standards pop up across the spectrum when it comes to a lot of things. Stay tuned. Much more
crisis. You trampled our freedom. You used our children as pawns to perpetuate your political power, destroyed their education, destroyed our economy, and you left behind an entire generation. Never again will we allow our Constitution and our freedoms to be shredded by your political agenda. We don't trust you. Too many citizens in this state don't trust you. A government unchecked, a government willing to defy our Constitution is a government that is completely out of control. So you can sit here and dictate whatever you want today. Maybe the political winds are in your favor here today, but I can tell you that we will not comply, and you're not going to do a darn thing about it, because the law, the Constitution, and the founding principles are on our side.
It's Blaine Wilhauer last week on the House floor just before Democrats passed the ban on certain weapons and magazines, and that ban in effect Tuesday. Governor J.B. Pritzker last week signing it. We've got, like 340 some odd days before we have to register our firearms with state police or else face a Class 2 felony. And also you've got future sales of these things in limbo, not able to happen absent a court order. And what's going on with this lawsuit? When are we going to see these lawsuits, and how fast are they going to progress? These are all questions we hope to get to the bottom of this week, and we'll, of course, do that here with Springfield's Morning News on WMAY. I'm Greg Bishop. You can always follow along, bishoponair@gmail.com is the email address, but you can find me on Twitter and YouTube and Facebook. Just search Bishop on Air, and we can connect that way. But you can also call in live and local at 217-629-7970. That's the phone number here with WMAY. I'd love to hear your thoughts about all of this and more, especially with Governor J.B. Pritzker talking about how he wants to make sure that this is enforced, and how is he going to enforce a gun ban and registry, especially when you've got sheriffs across the states in the majority of counties saying that they're not going to use their jails for those who are solely violating the gun registry. But again, less than a year before we have to register those weapons that are on a list that apparently can change as well. And are we all going to get memos when the change is made every October 1st by state police? Of course, that's all if this measure actually sticks and it remains in law. But absent a court order from lawsuits that might prompt a court order suspending this law, it is the law of the land right now. But also the law of the land, you've got the ATF, Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives federal agency that last week raised a lot of alarm with people after they issued new rules about short-barreled rifles and how certain accessories could make pistols short-barreled rifles. And if you go to the ATF's website, we'll just pull this up so that we can all kind of follow along. The ATF says that they're announcing a new rule to address stabilizing braces. What are these? They are these devices that go onto the buttstock of a short-barreled rifle or a pistol of sorts. You can attach it there, and then it attaches to your forearm and allows you to stabilize it. A lot of times these were used for individuals who enjoyed sports shooting, who may have disabilities, but they like shooting rifles, so they're able to hold that. But the ATF essentially saying that they are moving forward with a rule to require these devices to be registered. So they say the Department of Justice announcing it's submitted the final Federal Register, the Stabilization Braces Final Rule, which makes clear that when manufacturers, dealers, and individuals use stabilizing braces to convert pistols into rifles with a barrel less than 16 inches, commonly referred to as short-barreled rifles, they must comply with new laws and regulate those rifles, including the National Firearms Act, which is pretty controversial. In April 2021, at an event with President Biden, the Attorney General directed the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives to address the issue known as stabilizing braces. So you can see here again, you go to the ATF's website and it breaks it down, talking about keeping communities safe from gun violence. Seems to always be the go-to when it comes to regulation, some people say is an infringement. So we'll talk about that as well in the ongoing conversations about the Second Amendment and how some see it being under assault by continued regulation, infringing upon their Second Amendment rights. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Morning, Bishop.
Hey.
Hope you had a good 3-day weekend.
I needed it to decompress. Never enough time to decompress, though. That's for sure. We're back at it, though. Full speed ahead.
Amen on that. So when this law goes into effect, police officers that own AK-47s, assault rifles, LOL, if they don't register them, so they'll be felons working for the police force, correct?
Police are exempt from the Illinois gun ban and registry. They could if they wanted to register, but they are exempt from the gun ban and registry. They can go and buy guns now. The law is in effect. Regular citizens cannot go and buy firearms from a gun store if it fits into the category of what they defined as assault weapons.
I thought that didn't go into effect for a year.
No, it's in effect now. Tuesday, when the governor signed it, it went into effect immediately, meaning no future sales of semi-automatic weapons to regular citizens. No future sales of magazines for long guns that are more than 10 or magazines for handguns that are more than 15. No future sales, unless you're law enforcement. Now, the registry side of things, that kicks in January 1st. You have to register if you are grandfathered in. If you have, say, an AR-15, you have to register that weapon with Illinois State Police by January 1st, 2024.
So all the people that said they're not coming for our guns, do you know if they're backtracking their statement? Because they're coming for them.
A lot of people worry that confiscation follows registration, and that seems to be the largest concern about all of this. So we'll watch this closely. Of course, some of the latest with the ATF, that's concerning people because there's a registry that's supposed to happen after a certain amount of time. I think it was like 150 days or something that those who have these devices are going to have to register them, which that raises a lot of questions about just. Are you going to violate your Fifth Amendment right to not have to purge or not to incriminate yourself to say that you have these devices? Does that violate the Fifth Amendment for you to be compelled to do that, facing criminal penalties? But also you've got Illinois with its gun ban and the ongoing questions of enforcement and how that's going to be enforced. We got full phone lines. Let's get to them. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Hey, morning, Bishop.
Hey.
Can you clarify on this police being able to use gun? Is it for personal use they can buy them, or only for official use?
That's a great question.
If they have to use them if they can buy them for personal use, how is that not discrimination, which would make it unconstitutional right there? Correct?
Well, and that's another angle that you're going to see a lawsuit filed in state and federal court, I would imagine, is equal protection under the law, and how you're violating that by saying one class of people have certain rights, other class of people don't. And I can't answer the question for you if it's for official duties or if it's for personal use. I know that when it comes to the security guards, contracted security guards, I think they can only have them in official capacity. But again, this was like a 150-page law, a lot of legalese, a lot of detail there. So yeah, that's an answer I'm sure we'll have to answer, a question we'll have to answer in the wash. Good morning, you're on WMAY real quick. Let's go to this call here. Good morning, you're on WMAY. What's up?
Good morning. So, with the abortion law, Pritzker's willing to bus people to other states to give them the right to still have their abortion. So who's putting together a bus program for everybody that wants a firearm in Illinois?
Yeah, I don't think that program exists, nor would somebody like the governor advocate for something like that. He just banned guns in Illinois while expanding abortion and doing all of that just before he heads over to Switzerland, which we'll talk about here in a moment. But one last call. Good morning. You're on WMAY.
Before we head over to Davos, beautiful Davos this time of year. Great.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, you just solved a hell of a problem, man. Under recruitment of police officers. If we can get firemen exempt too, we could up the recruiting numbers for that too.
Well, and I saw somebody suggest that maybe the sheriff just goes around and deputizes people who have FOID cards. Say, if you've got a FOID card, you're deputized. I don't know if that works, but
Hand out little badges, little quarter badges, from like the little vending machine. I love it.
Who knows? It's a weird world we live in, that's for sure. And we'll cover it all for you, including the potential of lawsuits filed this week against Illinois' gun ban. Will that happen? We'll have the latest as we get it on WMA.